I wanted to share just a few thoughts before we close today's service. Obviously, as I mentioned before, I'm not Jewish, but there is a universality to Passover that I feel could resonate with all of us. It certainly has with me. And I've had, decades long now, interest and love for the Kabbalah, the Kabbalistic tradition. And it was there that I went to really see what I could pick out to share with you around the Seder table, to imagine us around the table together, and where the meeting place might be for us, Jew or non-Jew, to be able to really embrace, as Deborah said, the message of Passover. So, of course, again, as Deborah said earlier, it's trying to experience its relevance, and its relevance even for today. And that's what I would like to touch on just in a few moments. I've majorly condensed my notes, and I'm happy to share them with you if you have any interest at all, because I did a deep dive these past few days into the Kabbalah. But I love the way that they said that the only way to really understand the relevance of Passover, Jew or non-Jew, is to probe its soul. I thought, how beautiful, to probe its soul. Passover has a body and a soul. The body, of course, consists of the rituals and the laws and the structure of tradition. But the soul carries inner meaning and significance. And it's that I would like to very briefly touch upon before we close today. So the soul of the holiday is freedom. The entire objective of Passover Seder is to achieve transcendence. The exodus from Egypt was not just a technical matter about one nation leaving a country that had enslaved it. Mitzrayim means boundaries, constraints, and limitations. So it's, as Deborah said earlier, it's the journey out and freedom from our bondage to fears and inhibitions and addictions. And therefore, we are instructed to always envision as if we had just left Egypt, not to imagine ourselves in that, but to know that the universality is for all of us a journey towards transcendence. And for those of you, many of you, whether you are Jewish or been to many Seders like I have, the plate consists of 10 items. That's 3 matzah, 6 food items, and the plate itself. Now, I'm going to come back to the extra food items that are added. I'm going to touch very briefly on that towards the end. And that the Kabbalah talks about how the 10 elements of these reflect the human consciousness, the 10 dimensions of our human existence and what it is to be an individual. I love the thought of we are the universe in microcosm. So the curved matzah, because they usually end up being curved, are like our intellect in a way, serving like a container that cradles our emotions. And we are reminded to ensure that our minds, infused with humility, because the matzah is the symbol of humility, infused with humility, our minds can control our emotions, our passions, and our desires. And I don't want to butcher the Hebrew, but I'm going to give it my best shot. And I apologize to anyone if I am mispronouncing at all, but bear with me. The chesed, loving kindness, gevurah, discipline, tiferet, empathy, netzach, endurance, hod, humility, yesod, bonding, and malchut, dignity. So when we allow the humility of the matzahs to permeate our emotions, each of these emotions will function optimally and bring balance into our lives. Of course, the lamb shank on the Seder plate is considered the outstretched arm. And I think I could do a sermon alone on the meaning, the significance of the outstretched arm. I love that verse from, I think it's Deuteronomy. Underneath us are the everlasting arms. This, of course, is a symbol of the universality, the single most important emotion, love. To reach out our arm of love and care for others. From a Kabbalistic point of view, the hard-boiled egg symbolizes discipline. Why it's necessary for us to temper that in ourselves, to bring balance so that we can be able to reach out the arm of love. As Deborah so beautifully said, the bitter herbs, they elicit, of course, empathy. Eating the bitter herbs is about connecting with our empathy. And I would actually say also with divine empathy and the compassion that we must feel for ourselves and for others. I love that the pasty charoset reminds us, of course, of the clay and the mortar that were used by the Jewish slaves to make the bricks. But it's interesting because it's made of fruit. There's a sweetness to it. The apples, the pears, the nuts, and the wine, all symbols of strength and life and virtue, which I think is so interesting that it's juxtaposed, teaching us, of course, the lesson of endurance, how to withstand and go through and triumph through every challenge. The vegetables, the karpas, which grow low, interestingly enough, remind us again of that need for humility. And especially, I love that sort of the full-hearted yielding, the surrendering, the getting close to the ground to experience true humility. And also, of course, that a lot of these things are eaten ultimately in a sandwich. They're put together and eaten together. Why? Because to symbolize our constant reminder that we do not live alone. We need each other, and we need to be bonded to our true identity of who we are as people, but also to one another, and also, of course, to the God of our own understanding. And I would also like to add very quickly, and Susan, I'm sure, can elucidate more afterwards, but it has now become common to, of course, originally from the 80s, I believe, onwards, was to put an orange. And I love that the orange first, of course, meant a symbol of feminism and the honoring of woman and the divine feminine. But then, of course, diversity and the LGBTQI plus, always honored on the Seder plate by that orange. And most recently, of course, the lemon. Now, Susan, I'd love to invite you after to talk about it, but for me, it speaks so clearly of our constant call to freedom for all, justice for all, and an end to war. Wars and issues do not happen in a vacuum. And we are constantly being asked to examine ourselves. Where have we, our behaviors, our belief systems oppressed another and perhaps given birth or at least planted the seed of war? And then finally, I want to close with this. As I said, there are 10 items, and of course, it's the Seder plate itself. It's a holding container. It's almost like the moon. It has no light of its own, but because it represents that sense of selflessness, it reflects and contains light. And so the same also with the plate. without something in it, it's almost, it becomes what it is by virtue of what it holds. And it is a source of dignity. And dignity has no substance of its own. True dignity and self-confidence come from the sense that we are all created in the divine image, however you may imagine that to be, and being a channel of something greater than yourself is ultimately what gives you true dignity. And so may we perhaps take hold of one or two of these items on the Seder plate and use them as yeast in our own life, because of course yeast is not part of until after Passover, but to sort of fall into us and then take root, take birth. What could we focus on that we might feel may need work in this year between this Passover and next, to concentrate them and to always look for ways to repair or improve our attitudes. Thank you.
If you like this video, please like us on YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and click on the bell to be notified whenever we post a new video. Thank you.